I was only 5 years old when I was sold to the Chow family, but the young mistress treated me like her own sister. She didn't just teach me how to read and manage the books. She also taught me medicine and how to cook. The year she got married, she returned my deed of indenture, gave me some silver, and said, "Chu Heng, from now on, live by your own 2 hands. Never be a slave again." I kept my mistress's words close to my heart. I worked tirelessly to build a living, and within 2 years, I opened my very own restaurant. But then, I heard that she, heavily pregnant, had died in her husband's home. Sunset is when Forong Pavilion is packed and at its busiest. On the first floor, the main hall is filled with eager diners, and the private booths are packed with lively drinkers. The elegant rooms on the second floor are for guests to enjoy soft music and take in the bustling night view, while the third floor is exclusively reserved for the sons of wealth. They often gather here to compose poetry, raise their glasses, and admire the view. Forong Pavilion has only been open for 1 year, yet it is incredibly popular, all thanks to our signature dish, lamb served 3 ways. Sheep, freshly slaughtered at dawn, is already simmering in the pot by sunrise. Before the lamb goes in, winter melon is stewed until tender and soft. Then, it is scooped out and the broth is drained. Next, the lamb is added to the pot to simmer for 1 hour. Just before taking it out, a simple sprinkle of salt brings out an irresistible aroma. The meat is tender, smooth, and naturally sweet. Garlic is crushed in a mortar until soft and juicy, and mixed with vinegar. Dip the piping hot lamb into it. It is pure heaven in a single bite, refreshing and perfectly cutting through the richness. This is the first way to enjoy it. Next, the cooked meat. Scallions and fresh spices are finely minced and mixed evenly with raw rice. Pour in hot lamb broth and stir until thick and sticky. Then, stuff it into the lamb casing, which has been thoroughly scrubbed and washed with salt. Tie off both ends, prick a few small holes in the casing, and place it in a steamer to cook. Before slicing, the chewy casing wraps around the rice, which is fully soaked up the rich broth, making it savory, springy, soft, and chewy. A single bite is unforgettable. This is the second way. After eating the lamb and the stuffed sausage, finish with a steaming bowl of original lamb broth, topped with floating chopped scallions. It warms your stomach in the winter and works up a satisfying sweat in the summer. This is pure bliss. This is my signature lamb 3 ways. With this very dish, it took me only 2 years to go from running a humble, struggling meat stall to becoming the youngest shop owner in the entire city. Those who used to mock me, saying a woman could never run a restaurant, now bow to me with respect, showering me with flattery. They say, "Boss Chu, when you open your next branch, don't forget about us." But the only reason I have all of this today is thanks to my savior, Lady Chow Falon, the oldest daughter of the county magistrate. I served by her side for 11 years, right up until the day she got married. The prefect's second son, Zhao Pan, had fallen in love with her at first sight and sworn he would marry no one else. But her mother, the magistrate's wife, strongly opposed it. She wept and begged my master to reject the proposal. That Chu Heng was nothing but a worthless playboy who spent all his days and nights in brothels and taverns. Heaven knows how many women he had on the side. Plus, he has an older brother. If Faral marries into that family, she'll never have any say or power, and she'll be left to rot like a neglected widow. Her entire life will be ruined. But my master didn't care about any of that. He scoffed. "Madam, you are nothing but a cook yourself. You have such a narrow mind. Don't you know Prefect Zhang is going to be promoted to a high-ranking official in the capital in 2 years? Marrying into his family will be a massive boost to my own political career." So, ignoring his wife's desperate pleas, he insisted on accepting the marriage proposal. I went around asking about Zhang Pan's reputation, but everything I heard matched the madam's fears. He was completely useless, ignorant, and utterly stubborn. If my lady married him, her future would be utterly bleak. I begged her to run away, saying, "My lady, you have to save yourself." But she just smiled and said, "Chu Heng, my home is here. If I run away, what will happen to my mother? I am the only daughter she has. If I leave, those mistresses will use her lack of a son as an excuse to torture her to death." "Don't worry, Chu Heng. I'll make things work at the Zhang house. Zhang Pan may be a playboy, but I will do everything I can to make him change his ways." And first, I actually believed her. But right before her wedding, when she handed me back my indenture contract, I realized she was mostly just trying to comfort me. "Chu Heng," she said, "it is so infuriating. Take this silver and go as far away as you can. From now on, never be a servant again. Make a living on your own and live a good life." Tears streamed down my face. "Miss, I am your personal maid. I was always meant to go with you as part of your dowry." But Miss was resolute. Once she set her mind on something, no one could change it. "Chu Heng, being a dowry maid is a dead end, and being a bedchamber maid is even worse. You should walk your own path." Seeing that Miss had made up her mind, I knelt on the ground, kowtowed deeply 3 times, and bid a respectful farewell to her. But I did it in Wei count. I set up a small food stall by the banks of the Wei River and started selling 3-way mutton. This 3-way mutton was Madame's signature dish. Years ago in Luohe, she relied on this very dish to earn enough silver to buy master a minor official post here in Weicheng. Only, after they arrived in Weikang, her status restricted her, and she was forced to stay confined to the inner chambers. But she could never let go of this signature dish of hers. She often reminisced about her youth, when she earned her own money and lived so freely. So she passed the recipe down to Miss, and Miss, in turn, passed it down to me. Now, I make a living with this dish, keeping Madame's legacy alive. After running the stall for 6 months, I heard that the dowry maid Miss took with her had been taken by Zhang Pan as his concubine. He became the talk of the town, with everyone whispering about how heartless and ungrateful he was. They said that less than a year into his marriage, he was already humiliating his wife, and some even said he slept in his concubine's room every single night, all because his wife, Lady Chow, lectured him too often, which made him thoroughly sick of her. When he was drunk out on the town, he actually bragged, "My wife may be elegant, but her personality is too dull and uptight. There's no intimacy or excitement between us, and being with her is just plain boring. If I had known it would be like this, I would have been better off finding a sweet, understanding soulmate. It could even add a little spice to their lives." Normally, all the dirty gossip from those brothels would never reach the inner chambers, but it reached my ears, and I knew I couldn't go beg the Zhang family myself, but I could still go back to the Chow family. I went to beg Madame for help, telling her everything, see if the master would do something to help our young mistress. But Madame cried until she could barely breathe, and she still couldn't convince the master to say a single word to the Zhangs on her behalf. He said that since the dawn of time, men have always had multiple wives and concubines, and that it was perfectly normal. He said, "If I go there and speak up, it will only make everyone think my daughters from the Chow family are incredibly petty and jealous, ruining our family's reputation. And it does absolutely nothing to help my career." In the master's eyes, Madame was nothing but a tool to help him climb the social and political ladder, and his daughter was just another tool to secure his political alliances, whether they were happy or drowning in grief. He didn't care at all. Once I realized this, I told Madame that she must take care of her health, and it promised her that I would definitely find a way to save our young mistress. She was the one who saved me back then, and now it is my turn to save her. Day after day, I set up my food stall, pinching and saving every single penny. Fortunately, my 3-way mutton dish became an overnight sensation because of its incredible flavor. I cooked and saved up enough money. After borrowing a bit more from the money house, I bought a 3-story restaurant right by the Wei River and named it Frong Pavilion. Inside Frong Pavilion, people from all walks of life mingled. There were ordinary commoners, as well as wealthy young heirs. There was no distinction between rich and poor here. Every guest came for one reason only: to satisfy their appetite. Within less than half a year, Frong Pavilion became the most popular restaurant along the entire Wei River. I took advantage of this momentum to introduce a premium delivery service right to people's estates, though they required a high minimum order amount. Because of this, only the wealthiest and most influential households could afford to order, which of course included the household of Magistrate Zhang. And I made sure to personally deliver every single meal to Magistrate Zhang's estate. After delivering things a few times, Madame Zhang and I gradually grew closer. Every time we trouble you, shopkeeper, to come in person, I smiled and said, "To me, the Zhang mansion is quite different from the Pang family. I originally came from the Chow family, having served the eldest miss since we were children. Coming to Zhang mansion now naturally feels like coming home." Madame Zhang smiled and said, "So, that's why Frau hasn't been in a good state of mind lately. Since you're here, shopkeeper, why don't you go see her? You two can catch up on old times." She sighed, adding, "Please, talk some sense into her. Life is always hard for us women. Even I had to go through it. Tell her to let it go. Staying alive and taking care of herself is what matters most." I didn't quite understand what she meant until I saw my lady. She had gained a bit of weight, but her eyes were completely lifeless. Her face was pale and sickly sallow. She was sitting under a tree, sewing something. Hearing the maid's announcement, she only gave a soft, lifeless murmur of assent. As I stared at her, I suddenly found myself unable to call out to her. She was like a fragile, dying leaf, sitting there all alone, devoid of any life, looking so fadeless, so frail. If even a gentle breeze blew by right now, it felt like she would just drift away with the wind. I watched her for a long time. She never stopped sewing, working on what looked like a tiny baby garment. She numbly, stiffly pulled the needle up and poked it back down, pulling it up again, as if she didn't even know what she was doing. My nose stung with a sudden wave of grief, and I clenched my teeth to hold back the tears. My lady's needlework had always been exquisite. Back at the Chow estate, she also loved sitting under the trees to embroider. She always said trees grew by gathering the essence of heaven and earth, and sitting beneath them brought her peace. She used to make sachets for me, and even sewed my nightgowns. She would complain as she stitched, "What kind of maid puts on as many airs as you do?" Asking Midity to make clothes for me. But she would just laugh and say, "Chu Heng is growing bigger year by year, so we have to make her new clothes every single year." She looked after me just like she was raising a child. Back then, Madame often teased her, "You've started raising a child so early. In the future, when you have children of your own, I'm afraid you'll be sick of it and won't want to look after them." But Milady would just smile and say, "Then I'll just leave them to Chu Heng. As for me, I'll only focus on making clothes for the children." Back then, she was always smiling. Her cheeks were rosy and fair, just like peach blossoms blooming in spring. So soft, so radiant and completely breathtaking. I loved seeing Melody smile. Whenever she smiled, it felt as though all my worries would just melt away. But now, I've been watching her for so long, and there isn't a single smile on her face. Matey. I call out softly. For some reason, I'm terrified of startling her. Minade puts down her embroidery hoop and slowly turns to look at me. Once she recognizes me, the suck of life gradually returns to her eyes. Chu Heng. She gasps. I quickly rush over to her, kneel on the floor, throwing my arms around her. I try my absolute best to hold back mob tears. She looks so frail and weak. I can't bear to make her sad. Chu Heng, what are you doing here? Meaty asks. She is overjoyed, gently stroking my hair over and over again. She tells me to stand up so she can measure my height, noting how much I've grown. Our Chu Heng has really grown into a fine young lady. Holding back my tears, I force a playful smile and reply, of course. Right now, I'm actually the manager of the busiest tavern in Wekong. Mode, aren't I amazing? I didn't let you down, did I? I crouch on the floor, looking up at Malide, smiling as I wait for her to praise me. Or Chu Heng really is the best. But didn't I tell you to leave Wekong? Why are you still here? As soon as she said those words, I realized my lady was completely cut off from the outside world. She had no idea I had already opened the Lotus House. But then, my heart ached. She must have known her marriage would be full of misery, which is why she didn't want me to stay in Wekong and suffer with her. But hearing how she was doing, I just couldn't leave her behind. I took her hand and pleaded playfully, just like the old days. My lady gently pinched my cheek. Ah, you stubborn girl. She sighed. She didn't scold me any further, but simply took my hand and led me inside. Inside, besides the medical book she was always reading, there was only a simple desk with some ink and paper. Everything else in the room was incredibly bare. Compared to her old room, back when she was the treasured daughter of the Chow family, it was a world of difference. My lady, I whispered. She saw right through my thoughts. Smiling softly, she said, I've always preferred a simple life anyway, but on my way here, I had passed the concubine's quarters. I had stolen a quick glance inside, and even her rooms were far more luxurious than my lady's. A mere mistress living in luxury, while the legal wife gets nothing. Having lived in these noble households for years, I knew exactly what this meant. When the master of the house doesn't respect his own wife, every luxury goes to the favored mistress. And the servants? They're nothing but snobs who follow the wind. Behind her back, they might gossip that she's nothing but a low-class homewrecker, but to her face, they fawn over her, calling her ma'am and mistress with sweet smiles. And my lady was the one left to rot in the cold. I looked at her and said, I'm going to take you away from this place. We grew up together. I knew her better than anyone. I knew the pain she was burying inside. To be locked in a home with a husband who doesn't care. It's no different from a prison. Her eyes, once so bright, were now completely lifeless. She looked like a fading shadow of herself. It broke my heart because she used to shine so brightly. She had taught herself medicine, and even the finest doctors Wefalkang called her a genius. When she studied cooking, she mastered every single heirloom recipe of the family. When she managed the household, she ran the entire Chow estate single-handedly, keeping every scheming mistress strictly in line. She was once so brilliant, no full of life. And now, she's left to wither away in this tiny, miserable room. His talent for transformation was completely wasted, with absolutely no outlet. Lady, my restaurant is doing very well. Just wait a little longer. Once I've saved up enough money, I'll go negotiate with Jiang Pan. I'll return the bride price to him. Once you two divorce, I'll take you and the madam back to Loe. They can go back to the madam's hometown. But before I could even finish speaking, my lady interrupted me. Chu Heng, I can't leave anymore. Why not? My lady gently caressed her lower stomach, a look of helpless tenderness in her eyes. Chu Heng, I'm pregnant. I was both overjoyed and deeply worried. Then we'll take the child and leave together. Don't worry, my lady. I promise I can provide a good life for both you and the baby. My lady shook her head. We can't leave. This child is the flesh and blood of the Zhang family. They will never let me take this baby away. Then what if we get rid of the child? You can still get pregnant again later. We can still... My lady just stared at me, her eyes filled with utter despair. Chu Heng, it's impossible. The Zhang family will never let me go. Besides me, they'll never find another respectable woman willing to marry Jiang Pan. And on top of that, I'm pregnant now. It's just too hard. Even though Jiang Pan doesn't care about me, he cares deeply about this child. He will never agree to a divorce. Refusing to give up, I pressed on. What if we run away in secret? We can go live, deep in the mountains. My lady still shook her head. If I run away, they will report it to the authorities. The prefect holds a higher rank than my father. If he decides to pursue this, he will find all kinds of excuses to retaliate against my Chow family. I can't ruin the Chow family just for my own sake. I knew my lady had always been kind-hearted. She deeply cherished the Chow family, which her mother had sacrificed her life savings to secure. She cared deeply about her younger siblings, never once caring that they were born of concubines. She had tied her own fate, her very life and death, to the Chow family. That was the only reason she agreed to the marriage in the first place. I realized I couldn't change her mind. I had no choice but to find another way. I urged her to rest well and not to lose hope, promising I'd find a way to change her current situation. Before I left that day, the young mistress stood under the tree, staring blankly at me. A faint smile played on her lips as she waved at me. Chu Heng, when the baby is born, you'll be there. Before I left the Jiang estate, Madame Zhang sent someone to call me over again. She was kneeling in the prayer hall, her eyes filled with deep sorrow. Manager Chu, you think you can talk some sense into Farong? I didn't know what she wanted me to persuade her to do. I thought it was probably to tell her to focus on taking care of her pregnancy and carry on the Zhang family lineage. So, I replied, I've already spoken to her. The young mistress will focus on her pregnancy. But Madame Zhang sighed. How can she possibly take care of herself in this state? Her spirit is completely broken. Even the child in her womb is barely holding on. Even if she gives birth, it will cost her half her life. She's so incredibly talented. Marrying my worthless son was truly unfair to her. But what's done is done. She needs to look to the future. Find a way to survive. Since ancient times, in these wealthy households, how many husbands and wives actually treat each other with mutual respect? Most just get by day. If they see no hope in their husbands, they pin their hopes on their sons instead, hoping they will pass the civil exams and become officials. By the time they are in their 60s, they will have endured enough to become highly respected matriarchs, loved and revered by their children and grandchildren. Then, their life won't have been in vain. I finally understood. Madame Zhang wanted me to convince the young mistress to accept her fate. She knew the young mistress was deeply conflicted inside, repressed to the point of utter despair by the Zhang family. But she believed that as long as the young mistress had a baby, she could pin all her hopes on the child. Even if her husband was a complete scoundrel, if she could just endure for 10 or 20 years, there would still be hope. Madame Zhang's mindset was typical of most married women in wealthy households. What other choice is there? We just have to grit our teeth and endure it. After all, isn't that how everyone survives? But even my lazy pig of a son is useless. I asked her about it, and Madame Zhang smiled. If you have enough children, one of them is bound to make something of himself, just like my eldest son. The eldest son of the Zhang family has been brilliant and hardworking since childhood. He was incredibly studious and passed the provincial exams just last year. Now he's serving as an official in Weichong. Prefect Zhao has countless concubines and is entirely consumed by debauchery. And Madame Zhang lived just like this, holding on to hope for 20 years, finally seeing her son make something of himself. Yet, even though her son became an official, it still didn't change her reality. She would still work herself into a fit of rage every time Prefect Zhang went fooling around with other women. I smiled weakly, not bothering to argue with her any further. She had found a way to survive, a path of psychological victory to keep herself going. Why should I trouble myself by arguing with her? I merely made a final plea, asking her to look after my young mistress. Once I left the Zhang manor, I headed straight for Huhantang. Miracle Dr. Hu of Hucheng had once taught my mistress medicine, and he highly admired her. He had even tried to convince Master to let her study medicine under him, but it never happened. Miracle Dr. Hu, you have to save my mistress! I told him everything about her current situation, at least until I could come up with a solution. I wanted to get some medicine to nurse her back to health. But Miracle Dr. Hu only shook his head and sighed. Chu Heng, you've learned some medicine yourself from your mistress. You of all people should know that a disease of the heart cannot be cured with medicine. She may seem trapped there, but tell me, has the Zhang family actually restricted her? I froze and thought about it carefully. They really hadn't. The eldest young mistress of the Zhang family often goes out shopping, and even the concubines are free to come and go as they please. It was my mistress who refused to step outside. Miracle Dr. Hu spoke again. He locked himself away, refused to speak, and cut off all contact with the outside world. On the outside, he seemed alive, but on the inside, he was slowly killing himself. I once had a patient just like that. He seemed no different from anyone else, but he often refused to eat, refused to move, and would not even sleep. He didn't want to think about anything at all, having completely lost the will to live. I prescribed him so many medications, took him boating on the lake, went kite flying with him, and even made straw dolls together. But he just couldn't break free from the prison of his own mind. In the end, he still passed away. What you need to do right now is help her break free. Pull her out of that dark, isolated world. Rekindle her desire to live. Once she starts showing interest in food, in simple pleasures, and in the world around her, then she can finally be cured. I think I understood what he meant. No matter what it takes, I have to save the young mistress. So I went to see Madame Zhang. I told her I wanted to treat the young mistress's illness, and that I would find a way to make her better. Only when she is healthy will her unborn child thrive, I said. Madame Zhang readily agreed. She was thinking of her unborn grandchild, of course, but she also genuinely cared for the young mistress. Women are just born to suffer like this. Tell her not to be so stubborn. It will only make things harder for herself. But I couldn't agree with her way of thinking. I have never believed that women are born just to suffer. Back when I first started my street stall, the thing I heard most was mockery. A woman actually thinks she can run a restaurant? What could a restaurant run by a woman ever achieve? I'd never step foot in there. But I remembered what the young mistress once told me. As long as you rely on your own hands, there is nothing you cannot achieve. This has nothing to do with being a man or a woman. And so, I mastered our specialty mutton dish, preparing it 3 different ways. From selecting the finest lamb to sourcing the perfect ingredients, I put my heart and soul into every single step. After I opened the restaurant, I went even further and set up a farm just to raise sheep. I fed them with the finest licorice to make sure the quality and taste of the meat were absolutely flawless. I believed that as long as I set my mind to it, I could make anything happen. So, I took Miss to the Chow family's country estate. Miss, do you still remember this place? This is where we met for the very first time. Miss nodded and smiled. Of course I remember. Back then, you looked just like a muddy little monkey, crying as you trailed behind your aunt. I was only 5 years old that year. A terrible famine had hit our village, and desperate families were selling their own children just to survive. Not long after I was born, my parents and older brother were killed by river bandits. I had to live with my uncle and aunt. My aunt cried her eyes out for days, but in the end, she had no choice but to sell me. In a poor family like ours, one more child meant another mouth to feed, and they simply couldn't afford to keep me anymore. She walked with me for miles and miles, saying that if we went far enough, I wouldn't remember the way back. She told me never to return. From now on, you must think your new master well and live a good life. Just pretend you never had a home. If you want to hate me, go ahead. Your aunt really had no other choice. I knew that selling me was their only choice. My aunt had 2 children of her own. The oldest was a boy, who was 10 years old back then, and already old enough to help with the hard labor. But the other baby girl wasn't even 6 months old. I was the only one who could be sold. My aunt dragged me to the gates of an estate until she couldn't take another step and collapsed, holding me tightly and sobbing. If only she were a boy. Even though she's still so small, it wouldn't be so bad to sell her. But she is a girl. Back when we couldn't even get enough to eat. Who would ever want to take in a baby girl? As I was crying, a little girl, as pretty as a porcelain doll, walked out of the manor. She was wearing a beautiful, lotus pink dress. She looked just like a delicate porcelain doll. She walked right up to me and looked me up and down. I was dressed in nothing but filthy rags, and my feet were bare after walking miles of dusty roads with my aunt. My face was covered in thick grime. "Come with me," she said. Hearing this, my aunt fell to her knees, kowtowing frantically. "Thank you, kind young mistress. Thank you so much, young mistress." "Thank you. Thank you. Our girl is incredibly well behaved. She can do any chore you give her. We only beg you to give her a bite to eat, just enough to keep her alive." My aunt wasn't selling me for money. She just wanted me to have a place to go and a warm meal to eat. And I brushed the dust off my clothes, looked up at the young mistress, and said, "I can do any kind of hard labor, but please, young mistress, can you spare a bag of flour? Even coarse flour is fine. I just want my aunt to take it home and make some flatbreads for my brother and sister. My brother does back-breaking labor every day. He's so exhausted, and he literally dreams of just having one bite of flatbread. Please, show us mercy, young mistress. I'll do the dirtiest, hardest work, I swear." Hearing my words, my aunt covered her face and wept on the ground, tears streaming through her fingers, dripping into the dry dirt and leaving wet, dark spots in the dust. "Nanny Jiang, load up a cart with fine white flour and give her 5 tolls of silver before sending her on her way," the young mistress ordered calmly. My aunt couldn't bear to leave. She held my hand tightly, repeating over and over, "You must remember. She is your savior for life." From that day on, I etched her into my soul. Chow Falan would be my savior forever. As the young mistress and I sat under the apricot tree in the manor, I thought back to when I had first started serving her. At that time, I truly believed this grand manor was her home. "Miss, your house is absolutely massive. And look at all this land. You'll never have to worry about going hungry in this lifetime." Miss smiled and said, "This is just one of our country estates. I've been here these past 2 days helping my mother collect the accounts. Tomorrow, we'll head back to the main mansion. By the way, what's your name?" Miss asked. "Just Do," I replied. Miss froze for a second. "New?" I nodded. "Ever since I was little, my aunt and uncle have always called me that." "That's not a real name. Let me give you one." Miss flipped through the medical manual in her hand. "How about Chu Heng?" Chewing can be used as medicine and also as a fragrance. "From now on, you will stay by my side. I'll teach you medicine, and I'll teach you culinary arts too." I nodded vigorously. "That sounds so beautiful." The next day, we returned to the Chow family estate in Weichang. Miss never treated me like a mere maid. Instead, she treated me like a sister, patiently teaching me how to read, how to study, how to manage the books, and how to run the household. She let me follow along and learn whatever she was studying. Thinking back to those days, Miss smiled and said, No wonder you can run a huge restaurant now. Back then, when I had you learn bookkeeping and cooking, you picked them up instantly. But when I made you study the fine arts, you would just doze off." I giggled and said, "Well, everyone has their own calling, right? But if you hadn't saved me back then, Miss, I might still be working as a slave or a lowly maid somewhere today." Miss looked out into the distance and said, "This is all your own good fortune." I looked at Miss. My destiny was originally to be sold off as a laborer and a maid. It was you, miss, who told me that people can change their own fate. That's the only reason I'm here today. You taught me never to accept my fate, and then I must rely on myself. Have you forgotten that, miss? I went from being a nameless, ragged country girl in the fields to the manager of the Farong Pavilion today. So why are you still afraid to take that step, miss? My lady remained silent for a long time. As the sun was about to set, she said, Chu Heng, I remember so many things from the past. I remember finding so many medicinal herbs back at the manor. I wanted to study medicine once. I wanted to heal the sick and save lives. Divine physician Hu said if my lady could find her original purpose, there would be hope of curing her illness. So I brought her to Farong Pavilion. My lady, this restaurant was named after you. Did you guess it? As I asked, my lady gently tapped the tip of my nose. Is it really that hard to guess? I smiled and said, then, does my lady know that the signature dishes of Farong Pavilion were all taught to me by you? I took my lady to the kitchen and personally cooked a few dishes for her. Based on the recipe she had given me, I made some improvements. My lady took a few bites of each dish. Her appetite was much better than before. Wonderful. This chef's ladle should indeed be held by our Chu Heng. But I frowned, looking a bit troubled. But there is one dish. I just can't recreate the flavor you taught me. Which one? The braised chicken with bamboo shoots. My lady smiled and said, how is that hard? First is the heat control, and second is the ingredients. Tomorrow morning, go buy some fresh ingredients, and I will teach you. Divine physician Hu said we must do our best to give my lady things to look forward to. Which she wants to do in 2 hours. Which she wants to do tomorrow. Which she wants to do next year. With hope and anticipation, a person will keep moving forward. All right. My lady is always the nicest to Chu Heng. I smiled, holding my lady's arm affectionately, just like we did back when we were still at the Chow estate. Yes. Early the next morning, I personally went out to buy the ingredients. My lady said there was no need to go pick her up. She said she would come on her own, but I never expected that Zhangpan would show up with her. I had no idea my wife had such a fierce maid. The moment Zhangpan walked in, he flashed me a smirk and started talking. He had been to Farong Pavilion a few times before. He'd seen me, and after a few drinks, he even teased me about how exhausting it must be for a woman to run a restaurant. Why not just become my concubine? You wouldn't have to work in public anymore, and you'd have servants of your own to wait on you. Back then, I bluntly shot him down, saying, you must be dreaming, young master. If I ever marry, it will only be to a real man who stands tall and accomplishes great things. As for you, young master, you could never become a man like that. Not in a million years. Zheng Pan had just laughed it off and reached out to grab at my clothes. You must be joking, chef. I dodged him and said coldly, these hands of mine are best at carving meat. Would you like to try them out, young master? That terrified Zheng Pan. He scrambled out of Farong Pavilion and didn't look back. Never dared to show his face here again. Yet today, he was actually tagging along with my lady. I didn't even have to think to know what he was up to. He thought he had my lady completely under his thumb. And now that he knew I used to be her maid, he figured he had the leverage to push me around too. I completely ignored him. Instead, I walked right past him to help my lady inside. Everything is ready, my lady. We've just been waiting for you. My lady gave me an apologetic smile. But how could I ever blame her? Zhang Pan must have kept prying about where she was going. She didn't want to break her promise to me or make me worry, so she had no choice but to tell him. Seeing that I was ignoring him, Chunpad didn't even seem angry. He just followed us right into the kitchen. I acted as if he were invisible. Smiling happily, I brought out the fresh ingredients to show my lady. For the first time in a long while, a spark of genuine joy lit up her eyes. You must have gone to the market first thing this morning. Everything looks incredibly fresh. First, I chop the chicken into pieces, rinse them thoroughly, and place them in a pot of cold water. And I toss in some scallions and garlic. Once the water comes to a boil, I blanch the chicken and scoop it out. I add more wood to the stove, heating up the wok before pouring in a generous splash of rapeseed oil. Toss in the chopped scallions, garlic, and those sun-dried chilies we prepared earlier. Once the aroma fills the air, add the fermented bean paste we sealed and aged 3 months ago. Let the bean paste stir-fry with the fresh spices until they blend into a rich, savory aroma. Then toss in the chicken pieces. Once every single piece of chicken is coated in the rich sauce, pour in the fresh spring water, just enough to submerge the chicken. Let it simmer for 15 minutes, then toss in fresh bamboo shoots and chili peppers. Give it a quick stir, cover, and simmer for just a bit longer. The moment my lady lifts the lid, the entire restaurant is flooded with the mouth-watering aroma. Just breathing in this scent makes me feel like I could devour 2 giant steamed buns. I swallow my saliva, absolutely dying for a taste. Ever since we were young, I've loved every single dish my lady made. I could eat her food forever and never get tired of it. My lady gently taps my forehead. Look at you, all grown up but still acting like a little child. She teases me, of course, but she still picks out a tender piece of meat, blows on it to cool it down, and feeds it to me. I chew, utterly satisfied, from childhood until now. Whenever my lady cooks, the very first bite is always mine. Just as both of us are lost in these sweet memories, wrapped in warmth, happiness, and the delicious aroma. Yang Peng suddenly shatters the peace. Come on, my dear wife. How about feeding me a bite too? Your husband had no idea you possessed such remarkable culinary skills. No wonder your personal maid could open her own restaurant. We've been married for so long. Yet you kept this hidden from me. Were you just trying to be lazy and avoid cooking? My lady doesn't say a word. She just turns her head away, remaining dead silent. Divine physician Hu once said that the absolute lowest point of despair for my lady is when she doesn't even have the energy to argue anymore. If my lady won't say it, then I will. I snap around to face Zhang Pan. Master Zhang, you have never truly known my lady. So of course you have no idea how many talents she has. Setting aside the fact that the Zhang family has plenty of servants, and she shouldn't have to cook in the first place. Even if she did want to cook, you would actually have to step into her quarters to taste it. Wouldn't you, Master Zhang? Or did you expect the first wife of the house to cook and deliver meals straight to your concubine's room? Zhang Pan's face instantly darkens with displeasure. You're nothing but a lowly maid. How dare you speak to me like that? She is not a maid. The young mistress suddenly spoke up. Her deed of sale was returned to her long ago. She is now the manager of Farong House. The young mistress glared at Zhang Pan, her eyes icy cold, her expression completely detached. She wouldn't say a single word to defend herself, yet she couldn't bear to see me get insulted and insisted on standing up for me. My nose tingled and tears nearly spilled over. Zhang Pan looked at us with cold disdain and suddenly burst into laughter. How interesting. You two really share a deep bond of master and servant. You actually have less allure than this little maid of yours. Chu Heng turned his gaze to me, sizing me up from head to toe with an incredibly filthy look in his eyes. Manager 2, why don't you submit to me? Become my concubine, and I'll let you enjoy endless wealth and glory. That way, you can be with your young mistress all the time. It's a win-win. You are currently in the very prime of your youth, with such a stunning figure and face. Rather than entrusting yourself to some stranger in the future, why not give your heart to me and stay by my side? I have always understood your heart. I will treat you with absolute tenderness. Even your mistress, though she bickers with me constantly, still can't let me go deep down in her heart. A sharp slap landed right on Zhang Pan's face. The young mistress was trembling with rage. She glared at him, giant tears streaming down her face. Get out! Get the hell out of here! If you dare touch Chu Heng, if you dare to file her, I will destroy your entire Zhang family. The young mistress grabbed everything within her reach and hurled them at Zhang Pan, screaming with bloodshot eyes, like a lioness protecting her cub. Looking at the young mistress, my heart ached terribly. Back then, when my aunt sold me, my heart throbbed with this exact same pain. I know she only did it to keep me alive, and I was deeply grateful to her for finding me a good family to serve. As I look at my lady now, my heart feels like it's tearing apart. The pain is so sharp, my entire body goes numb. It takes me a long moment to snap out of it. She stops screaming, too. She turns around to look at me, and her fury vanishes in an instant. Chu Heng, don't be afraid, she says, her voice trembling. But she is so gentle, so as if she's terrified of scaring me. I walk toward my lady, feeling like every single step weighs 1,000 pounds. My lady.
Just how far did Zhang Pan push her?
Finger this terrified? When Zhang Pan targeted me, she stood up to protect me. Defying him for the very first time, I pull her into my arms, holding her trembling body tight. She is clearly pregnant, and her face is filled out a little. But she is still so terribly thin. I'm terrified that if I hold her too tight, I might break her bones. She feels so thin and fragile, leaning into my chest, sliding to the floor, as if all her strength has been drained away. Chu Heng, let's leave, my lady whispers. I finally realize that no matter how much I give in, he will never treat me like a human being. He is just like my father. He doesn't see me at all, and he doesn't see my mother either. Chu Heng, I suddenly feel so tired. I can't protect myself, and I can't protect you or my mother. I don't want to care about the Chawa family anymore. Let's just leave. Let's leave Waiken and go back to Lohe. I gently wipe away my lady's tears, the wetness on my fingertips, making my heart ache. My lady, when has she ever cried like this? In my memory, she was always smiling. Smiling as she told me everything was fine. Chu Heng, I'm here. You have me. Okay, let's go. Holding her tight, I whispered, let's leave this place. Let's get out of here. We will start a completely new life. Forget about Zhang Pan. Forget about the Chow family. We'll only live for ourselves. But less than 2 hours later, the officers arrived. They shut down and sealed Farong Pavilion. Chuan, you're coming with us. Someone reported that you kidnapped and unlawfully detained the second young mistress of the Zhang family. She was much calmer now than before. She stood up, smoothing her clothes and fixing her hair. I am the second young mistress of the Zhang family. I came here on my own. Did Farong Pavilion kidnap me without me even realizing it? But the officers wouldn't listen. They only knew they couldn't afford to offend the prefect's family. And they certainly couldn't afford to offend Zhang Pan. Instead, one of them reported back to Master Zhang. Young mistress has been found. We are sending her back to the estate immediately. As for shopkeeper Chu, he will be detained for now, until we get to the bottom of this. She stood right in front of me, shielding me from their touch. but there were only 2 of us. How could we possibly fight off all these officers? When the shop assistant saw the officers trying to drag me away, every single one of them stepped forward to block their path. But these thugs in uniform didn't care about them at all. Leader, Constable John, drew his blade and slashed straight at the youngest errand boy, Aba. Bilal couldn't dodge in time. The blade sliced deep into his left shoulder. Bright red blood poured down his arm. Aba hissed in pain, his face contorting, but he didn't budge an inch. Let go of our shopkeeper. Our shopkeeper did nothing wrong. Aba's voice trembled from the intense pain, but he still stubbornly defended me. Looking at Aba, I suddenly gave up all resistance. I knew these power-tripping beasts would never show any mercy. If I don't comply, they won't spare my boys. The kids working at Farong Inn are all from poor families. I took them in, giving them food and a place to stay, and I paid them better wages than the Pang family ever did. In return, they worked their hearts out for me, the homeless ones. They truly treated this place as their home. But now, because of me, they're the ones getting hurt. I stared at Constable Zhang. He raised his eyebrows at me, looking absolutely smug. He knew exactly how to strike my weakest spot. Make sure our young mistress gets safely back to the Cao family. Then, I'll go with you to the magistrate. I couldn't risk letting the young mistress go back to the Zhang house. I was terrified that scumbag, Zhang Pan, would take his revenge on her.
Constable Zhang agreed.
He sent someone to fetch the Chow family's butler and had the young mistress escorted safely back home. I told my boys not to panic. Take these next 2 days to get some rest. Go to Wei Chunhou and bring Dr. Hu. You'll get Bao patched up. My priority was keeping the young mistress and my boys safe. I knew I would find a way out of this. I refused to believe the Zhang family could rule all of Weicheng. There are other powerful officials in this city besides them, and many of them are regulars at my Farong Inn. With their influence, I'm bound to be released sooner or later, especially Governor Li's elderly mother. She absolutely loves my mutton. She's also a regular patient at Win Chung Hao. She trusts Dr. Hu completely. Once Dr. Hu passes the word, I'm sure I'll be set free in no time. I was dragged back to the magistrate's office. Without any questioning, they threw me straight into a dungeon. Constable Zhang walked in, holding a whip soaked in brine. Did you kidnap the second mistress of the Zhang family? He sneered. I spat right in his face. You want a forced confession? In your dreams! Constable Zhang raised his arm and lashed the whip hard across my arm. I hadn't made a single sound. I gritted my teeth and endured the searing pain. He laughed. Good, you've got some real backbone. Constable Zhang sneered. He soaked his whip in a bucket of cold water for a moment, before picking it up and lashing it across my stomach again. The agony was so intense, cold sweat drenched my entire body. I stared down at my bloody, torn flesh and laughed even louder. Go on! If you have the guts, beat me to death right now. When Governor Li's mother comes looking for me, all she'll find is a cold corpse. I wonder how that righteous old lady, who absolutely despises injustice, will react to this. And what will the honorable, incorruptible Governor Li do when he finds out his own subordinate is torturing and framing innocent citizens? You want to risk your neck to please your master and claim credit? Go ahead. Kill me then. But when the dust settles, let's see if your master will actually protect you. Constable John hesitated. He was only a distant relative of the Chong family. He got this job solely by kissing the right asses. He knew very well that he was nothing but a low-level lackey. If the governor actually launched an investigation, his master, Jiang Qufo, wouldn't take the fall for him. He would throw him under the bus without a second thought. Position bought with favors was already on shaky ground, and so Constable Zhang stopped. He picked up the bucket of freezing water and splashed it all over me. I'll let you off easy this time. But the freezing water was mixed with salt. As it seeped into my open wounds, the sheer agony nearly made me black out. But I couldn't pass out. I had to stay conscious. I had to survive this. I had to take the young mistress and get out of this place. Gritting my teeth, I held on for an entire day, before finally being released with all charges dropped. Abao and the rest of the shop workers were waiting outside for me. Abao's face lit up with pure joy. Boss, you're out! But the moment his eyes fell on my wounds, he burst into tears. It's all my fault. I'm so useless. I couldn't stop those thugs. And made you suffer like this. I gently patted his head. I comforted him, telling him it was all right. He was only an 8 or 9-year-old boy, yet he had already done more for me than anyone could ever expect. Boss, after they dragged you away, we went straight to see Dr. Hu. The other shopkeepers on our street saw you get arrested too, so they all signed a petition and marched to the magistrate's office to demand justice for you. They say shopkeeper Chu has always been a hard-working man, and that he only adopts orphans. How could a man like that ever kidnap anyone? That's why the governor promised everyone he would investigate this thoroughly. A wave of warmth filled my heart. Why is it that other merchants constantly compete with each other, as is the nature of business? Yet they still have their own lines they will never cross? They would never harm anyone. How utterly ironic. The lawmen who are supposed to protect the people try to beat confessions out of the innocent, while the merchants, looked down upon as the lowest class, stand completely united.
How is Ms. Kill?
I asked. I'll go to the Chow residence to check on Zhao first, and then head to Fuichun Clinic. But the workers stopped me. Boss, your injuries are too severe. Please, you need to go to Week Chu Clinic first. These kids didn't know how to hide their feelings. Their worry was written all over their faces.
Did something happen to Miss Chow?
I pressed them. No one would answer me. No. Panic began to set in. I turned and bolted toward the Chow residence. Boss, Miss Chow, she was sent back to the Zhang family. The bookkeeper called out to stop me. Master Chow said she is the second madam of the Zhang family. He said once she married into the Zhang family. She belonged to them. So he sent people to drag her back. Madam Chow was crying and trying to stop them, but she couldn't. She chased them for a long way, only to be trampled by a runaway horse. She's still unconscious right now. Just then, the worker who had been sent to gather news near the Cow residence rushed over. Madam Chow didn't make it. My world began to spin. A suffocating weight pressed down on my chest. After a long moment, I spat out a mouthful of blood.
And then blacked out.
I didn't know how long I was unconscious. I had so many dreams. In my dreams, Madam Chow was looking at me with a warm, gentle smile. She told me, "My daughter is such a poor child. She is so young. What can she possibly do on her own? Better tag along with you." In my dreams, she was always smiling. The concubines in the manor mocked her for not being able to bear a son. When she never got angry, she would only say with pride, "But I have ma farong." She loved her daughters so much and raised her like a precious treasure. She used to sit under the eaves, doing needlework, watching the young mistress and me play. No matter what the young mistress did, she would always praise her with a smile. Even handkerchiefs with crooked, messy stitches that the young mistress embroidered when she was a little girl, she would cherish and save like priceless treasures. Before Madam married the master, she owned her own tavern. After giving birth to the young mistress, for the sake of her daughter's future, she bought the master an official title. She loved her daughter so deeply, yet in the end, she couldn't protect her. Time and again, she had to watch helplessly as her daughter was sent into that den of wolves. I can't even imagine how desperate and agonizing Madam's final moments must have been. Divine Doctor Who said that my extreme grief and excessive worry had caused a high fever, leaving my body too weak and in desperate need of rest. But I couldn't calm down at all. My heart bled for Madam, and I was worried sick about the young mistress. I snuck out of the clinic and ran toward the Zhang Manor, only to see white morning silk hanging in front of the Zhang Manor's gate. The main gates were wide open, filled with guests arriving to offer condolences. What a tragedy. 2 lives lost all at once. Committing suicide at home is a grave sin against filial piety. It's already generous enough of Master John to arrange a funeral for. Suddenly, my legs gave out. I dragged myself through the front gate, each step heavier than the last. It felt as if a gaping hole had been torn in my heart, with the cold wind howling right through it. Did something happen to the young mistress? Madame Zhang was weeping in the main hall. The moment she saw me, she wailed in grief. "Changke, are you here to see your young mistress off on her final journey? You two were mistress and servant after all. Go. Bid her a proper farewell." In the middle of the hall sits a namu-wood coffin. It has already been nailed shut. They said my lady lies inside, along with her unborn child. He argued with her endlessly after he came back. But she was always so stubborn and proud. So what if she scolded her own husband a bit? She couldn't take it and just rammed her head against the wall,
Said Madame Chong.
"She's lying. For Madam's sake and for mine, my lady would never take her own life." But I didn't argue. I silently offered her some incense. "I want to pack up some of my lady's old belongings. May I?" I asked respectfully. Madame Zhang had someone lead the way for me. The one leading me was Zhang Pen's concubine, Chunao. She was my lady's dowry maid. Within 6 months of marrying into the family, she was promoted to a concubine. Back when we were at the Chow estate, we both worked in my lady's courtyard. I followed her toward my lady's courtyard not long ago. I had just walked down this very path. Back then, I came to save her. Today, I'm here to say goodbye.
厨娘萨领里烧定很茶。
I stared at her, expressionless. To be honest, I felt a trace of resentment toward her. "Do you know why I wanted to be a dowry maid in the first place?" she asked, but I didn't reply. She continued anyway. "After my lady sent you out of the estate, she dismissed everyone in her courtyard. She said those who wanted to stay would be reassigned to other courtyards, and those who wanted to leave could get their freedom papers from her. She never intended to bring any dowry maids with her. I was the one who went to her. My lady told me that if I went with her, I was bound to end up as a bedchamber maid. But that was exactly what I wanted. I don't have your talent for making money. And besides the Chow estate, I have nowhere else to go. Instead of being a maid for the rest of my life, I'd rather fight to become a concubine. That way, my future children would at least have a better life." My lady agreed. She said, "Everyone has their own path to walk. I've finally come to terms with it. No matter which path I take, as long as I can make a good life for myself, that's all that matters." At first, Zhangpan treated my lady well enough. He was only after her beauty. But over time, he started complaining that she was too controlling and lacked any warmth. He began to humiliate her, even beating and cursing her. 6 months before their wedding, my lady didn't have a single uninjured spot left on her body. So, I took the initiative to seduce him. My lady had always been so good to me. I couldn't just stand by and watch him beat and abuse her anymore. So, I climbed into his bed and later became his concubine. Yet, my lady never made things difficult for me. Her humiliated me. She only ever asked if I was doing okay. Chu Heng, I have absolutely no feelings for Japan. I only wanted to have a slightly better life. Now, I'm living the kind of life I could only dream of before. But my heart has never been at peace. I constantly feel so guilty toward her. That's why there are some things I must tell you. As she spoke, Chu Heng pulled me into a quiet, secluded corner. My lady. She was beaten to death by Zhang Pan. That day, when the master brought her back, Zhang Pan was drunk and started hurling abuse at her. He kept shouting, "That bitch Chu Heng won't let me touch her." But once she's thrown into prison, there'll be plenty of men who will have their way with her. At that point, let's see who would ever dare marry a ruined woman like her. My lady was furious and argued back with him. In a rage, he grabbed her by the hair, slammed her head against the wall, and snarled, "Who the hell do you think you are to dare speak to me like that? Chu Heng, I'm so sorry. It was my own weakness. I was watching from outside the window, but I didn't dare to stop him." Hearing this, I felt as if my heart had been dealt a heavy, crushing blow. Once again, it was because of me. Because of me. My lady was beaten to death by him. As Chu Heng spoke, she burst into tears. I gently patted her back to comfort her. It's not your fault. When evil people run rampant in this world, yet the vulnerable are always the ones who end up blaming themselves. There is absolutely no justice in this world. I carefully packed away my lady's belongings. The only person in the Chow family who actually cared about her is dead. No one else is coming. I'm the only family she has left. Strangely, I don't even feel sad anymore. I'm completely numb. So calm that even I don't understand it. Chiang, you little wench. Wearing that white flower actually makes you look quite alluring. Zhang Pan subtly sneered from behind me. The white flower in my hair had just been pinned there by Chunyang. I ignored him, but he wouldn't stop. What? Are you regretting it now? Old man Li and those other bastards can't compare to me, can they? Sure, your precious lady is dead, but out of respect for her, I suppose I can still take you in. And hey, there's no time like the present. Let's make you mine today. This is me. With that, he lunged at me, trying to tear my clothes off. He knew the Chow family wouldn't lift a finger to save me now. My lady was gone. There was no one left to protect me. While my lady lay dead outside, this absolute beast only wanted to satisfy his lust. I want Zhang Pan dead. I will make him suffer a fate worse than death. When I finally left the Zhang estate, I was driving a large carriage. I told Madame Shang that I wanted to take every single one of my lady's belongings with me. Since she took her own life, she must have been utterly miserable living under the Zhang family's roof. If you keep her things around, aren't you afraid of being haunted, madam? I asked her. Madame Zhang hesitated over and over before finally letting me take everything. She knew the truth. She knew my lady was actually murdered by Zhang Pan, a pregnant woman who died a wrongful, violent death, would harbor an incredibly vengeful spirit. So, I hired a large carriage to slip in through the back gate and load up everything my lady left behind. Chongyang inspected every single crate I packed before walking me to the gates. Go, Chu Heng, get out of here. I cast one last look back at the Zhang estate and drove away. Furong Pavilion was finally open for business again. I hosted a 3-day feast for the entire city to send off my young mistress. After that, I opened for business as usual. Just like before, I was busy every day picking ingredients, cooking, welcoming customers, and mingling effortlessly. 3 months later, the authorities came to find me again. Zhang Pan had gone missing, and since we had bad blood, they suspected me. But the officers couldn't find a single clue. They had even searched every piece of clothing and trunk I took when I left the Zhang estate that day and found nothing belonging to the Zhang family. Everything was my young mistress's own dowry. Ever since then, I had been busy in the Furong district every day. Constable Chang clearly suspected me of kidnapping Zhang Pan. Sitting at the table, I asked with a half smile. Constable Zhang snapped irritably. After you visited the Zhang estate that day, young Master Zhang went missing. I smiled and said, well, you should be suspecting old Madame Zhang instead. When I went there that day, I asked her why Zhang Pan wasn't at the estate when his wife had just passed away. She told me he was too devastated and had gone out to clear his head. When she said that, all the other guests who came to offer condolences could testify for me. Constable Zhang was left speechless. He scratched his head and left. There was absolutely no lead on Zhang Pan's disappearance. The truth was, everything started because old Madame Zhang lied. She knew her son had beaten his wife to death. To cover for her son, she had sent Zhang Pan away. To the public, she claimed he was overwhelmed with grief and was recovering somewhere else to clear his mind. She had no idea how long her son had been hiding out there. It wasn't until half a month had passed with no sign of him return that she finally began to panic. But she didn't dare tell the truth or admit that she was the one who had sent him away. Thus, the case was left completely cold, with no lead at all. When my assistant heard the news, he was secretly thrilled, hoping that Zhang Pan, in his drunken state, would act recklessly and stir up some trouble. Let him reap what he sowed. I smiled faintly. I softly chided him, warning him about his loose tongue. But I knew that Zhang Pan's days were numbered. I went to the Zhang mansion to visit the old Madame Zhang. She was in a dreadful state. Her eyes were deeply sunken, and her gaze was hollow and lifeless. Zhang Pan's disappearance didn't seem to affect Master Zhang on the slightest. To him, losing a worthless, good-for-nothing son was no big deal. Zhang Chufei didn't feel a shriek of grief. After all, He still had his successful eldest son and plenty of young concubines to keep him company. He barely even bothered to come home anymore. Only Madame Zhang was left drowning in endless agony. This was her son, the child of her own flesh and blood. How could her heart not break for him? So, I took her out to help clear her mind. I told her that I understood her pain completely. When a child is in danger, only their mother truly suffers. Just like Madame Chow, whose daughter lived through a living hell. She was the only one who truly wept for her daughter. The only one who would desperately risk everything to go after her. For once, a flicker of emotion appeared in Madame Zhang's eyes. It was fear. She was absolutely terrified of me. Yet, she couldn't even explain why. I was acting completely normal after all. Madam, let's take a walk in the countryside. I have a small estate out there. I keep quite a few sheep on the grounds. Let me personally pick one out to make your favorite mutton dish. The little lambs in that 3-foot pen have been strangely energetic lately. I told Madame Zhao that the more energetic the sheep are, the more tender and delicious the meat will be. I asked her to choose one herself. She pointed to the one jumping the highest. Shopkeeper Chu is so kind-hearted to still be thinking of an old woman like me. But as for the others, who else would ever remember me? Who else would even care? I simply smiled and said nothing. I had my helper lead her out first, while I pushed open the door to the woodshed in the back. The room was piled high with straw, and behind the hay, there was a secret door. Zheng Pan was tied up, slumped on the ground, glaring at me with pure venom. Your mother is here, I said. He chose the most energetic sheep, waiting for me to cook him a 3-way mutton feast. But he doesn't know that the only reason that sheep was so lively was because its nose was the sharpest. It smelled blood. The scent of blood dripping from your body was driving it wild. How amusing. He knows you're locked in here, bleeding out under my blade. But your mother, she has absolutely no idea. With that, I picked up the knife beside me. What wasn't long, but it was incredibly sharp. The exact one I usually use to skin sheep. I sprinkled some powder on the blade and gently sliced off a piece of flesh from the scarred root of Zhang Pan's thigh. Absolute terror filled Dai Pan's eyes, but the painkillers kept him from feeling any pain just yet. All he could do was watch his own blood trickle out, drop by drop, utter powerless to stop it. Stay alive. I'll be back tomorrow. I smiled, then plunged the knife deep into his leg. Tears streamed down Zhang Pan's face, silently begging for mercy. But how could I ever show him mercy? The day he followed Miss to Farong Pavilion, I already wanted to kill him. I have regretted not ending his life that day. Every single second since. When I was packing away Mrs. belongings, I had only one single thought. Zhang Pan must die.
说我们看盘狼讲的美。
I whipped out the knife from my coat and stabbed him right in the waist. He screamed out in sheer agony. But everyone in the mansion was far too busy with Mrs. funeral to notice. Only Chu Nian, who had just walked over with me, heard the noise. When she rushed in, panicking, I was standing there, pointing the knife right at Zhang Pan. Zhou Pan clutched his wound, his face contorted in pain. Spouting Chunyan, he roared. What the hell are you standing there for? Go get someone now! Tuanyong was terrified, stammering. But I thought you left, master. Zhou Pan spat on the floor. This is my own damn house. Why the hell should I leave? Since Chao Forong married me, her life and death belong to me. So what if I killed him? What can anyone do to me? What have I got to fear? My father is the prefect. My brother is a provincial scholar. Who dares to lay a finger on me? The Chow family will still have to crawl to me, with a smile on their faces, while his back was turned. I drove another blade right into his back. Zhenpong opened his mouth wide, but couldn't make a sound. Qin Liang rushed forward in a flash, crumpled up a handkerchief, and stuffed it into his mouth. Xinyan grabbed my hand, trembling. Chu Heng, I know you want to kill him, but you can't do it here. If he dies in the Zhang estate, you'll never escape the blame. I don't care if I die, as long as the young mistress is avenged. But what about you? Chen Yan asked. What will you do then? The young mistress risked everything to protect you. Are you really going to throw your life away for him? Is it worth it? How can you face the young mistress after all the love she showed you over the years? I was left speechless. Triningo was right. The young mistress wanted me to live. I had to find a way to take him away while keeping myself safe. Don't let the young mistress's love for you go to waste. We found some rope, tied Zhang Pan up, and stuffed it into a chest. Madame Zhang ordered her servants to prepare a carriage for me. And just like that, I smuggled Zhang Pan out of the Zhang estate. Even the blood-stained carpet was taken out in the carriage under the guise of old belongings. Nobody knew. I locked Zhang Pan inside a secret room in the sheep pen. These days, I still wake up early every day to select sheep. And every day, I carve off a piece of his flesh. I had studied medicine under the young mistress, yet I wasn't an expert. I still knew how to avoid his vital organs. I need Zhang Pan to stay alive. I feed him painkillers every single day. I want him to watch himself bleed dry, drop by drop. I want him to live in the agonizing terror of the unknown. I am going to torture him slowly and thoroughly. Madame Zhang barely touched the Latin. Frowning, she sat in the private room on the 3rd floor, staring out as her tears fell. I tried to comfort her. Good men are protected by heaven. So please don't worry too much, madam. Mrs. Zhang just wept in silence, not saying a word. Once she had cried herself out, She left behind a silver ingot and went home. From that day on, she came every single day, sitting on the third floor and just watching. Why she cried, I didn't know. Did coming here every day to watch me bring her peace of mind? Or was it something else? Not that I had the time to care. All I knew was that Zhang Pan had been missing for 1 month, and he had been on painkillers for that entire month. It was time to teach him the true meaning of fear. I stopped giving Zhang Pan his medicine, but I kept his mouth gagged. The pain had him breaking out in cold sweat, but he couldn't make a sound. Lately, the licorice we fed the sheep had been excellent, and the lambs were happily bleating all day long. His muffled groans were completely drowned out by the cries of the herd. 2 months after Zhang Pan went missing, Mrs. Zhang stopped coming around. Word is that Chu Heng was 3 months pregnant. Mrs. Zhang was pampering her day in and day out to protect the baby. This was Zhang Pan's flesh and blood, so she cherished it above all else. As Chu Heng and I were old friends, I went to the Zhang estate to visit her. She told me that her mother-in-law didn't really think about him much anymore, treating him as if he were already dead. All her focus is on the baby in my womb. She said, once the baby is born, and once the child grows up, everything will be fine.
Mrs. Zhang hadn't changed at all.
She hadn't actually moved on from grieving her son. She had simply found a new way to numb herself. Once my grandson is born, and once my grandson grows up, everything will be fine. If my grandson becomes successful, it's the same as my son being successful. And if that's the case, it doesn't even matter if my son is dead. I gently touched Chu Heng's belly, a wave of bitterness washing over me. Just a few months ago, I touched my young mistress's belly the exact same way, eager, looking forward to becoming an aunt. Take good care of the baby, and if you ever need anything, just come to me, I told Chu Heng sportively before leaving. She looked at me and subtly smirked. Shung, let me tell you a secret. I've already carved off most of the flesh from Zhang Pan's right leg. There was barely anything left of his left leg, with most of his bone completely exposed. Flies swarmed all around him. He weakly tried to wave them away, but the moment his eyes met mine, he started shivering with absolute terror. I yacked the rag out of his mouth. Zhang Pan, your mother isn't looking for you anymore because she thinks she's getting your heir.
Till now, he is pregnant.
If nothing goes wrong, that will be your very last child. A spark of hope slowly flickered in Zhang Pan's eyes. He thought I had tortured him enough, and that I was finally softening up. He fell to his knees, begging desperately. I won't say a word, I swear! Shopkeeper Chu, please, spare my life. I toyed with my dagger and let out a soft chuckle. Oh, but I forgot to tell you, that baby isn't actually yours.
After I dragged Zhang Pan away,
Chu Heng became the head of the second household. With so many things to worry about, one thing led to another, and she caught the eye of the outer courtyard manager. When I got pregnant, I lied about how far along I was, she had told me. I hope you'll help me keep up the lie when the time comes. I gladly agreed. Slowly, a murderous look filled Zhang Pan's eyes. I knew that bitch was nothing but trouble, he spat, filled with pure hatred. How dare she betray me? I let out a mock laugh. How utterly naive. Your life is hanging by a thread, and you're still worrying about that? Continued. But now, everyone thinks you're dead, so they believe that baby is your posthumous child. Your poor, miserable mother is still worrying herself sick over Chu Heng's belly every single day. Little does she know, that child has absolutely nothing to do with the Zhang family. But honestly, that kid is quite lucky. It doesn't matter how many women you had on the side. Chu Heng is currently the only registered woman of yours who is carrying a child. Soon, every single bit of your inheritance will belong to him, with him being your posthumous child and with the grandparents spoiling love. Can you guess if Zhang Fu will pour every resource he has into grooming him? Zhang Pan's face contorted in absolute rage. I'll kill him. I'll kill him. But I do you, he screamed, his voice raw. All his life, he was the one who played with women. Never had he been so thoroughly mocked and disregarded by one. To be toyed with like this. I watched silently as Zhang Pan broke down. Help me! Kill him! I'll give you all my fortune! All of it! I let out a cold smile. You're too late. I've already promised Chu Heng that I'd help her lure men in. So, I'm here to send you to your grave. I wiped the knife clean. We'd walked toward Zhang Pan with a smile. He scrambled backward, cold sweat pouring down his face as his legs scraped painfully against the ground. But he didn't dare to stop until I backed him into a corner. Zhang Pan burst into tears, begging and pleading for mercy. I know you want to avenge your young mistress. But I am her husband, after all. For her sake, please spare me, okay? I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. Mention my mistress one more time, and I'll stab you.
Zhou Pan shut his mouth.
His eyes filled with absolute terror. I raised the knife and drove it clean into his arm. He shrieked in shock, but I paid him no mind. I pulled the blade out and stabbed him again, strike after strike. My face was blank, while my tears kept streaming down. Even if I tear Zhang Pan into 1,000 pieces today, it won't bring my mistress back. I only wanted my mistress to be safe and sound. I only wanted her to live. I worked so hard to get her treated. I thought I could save enough money to take her away from this misery.
To capture Lord He,
or I could see her smile like she used to. Every single day. But she was killed by this piece of trash. By now, Zhang Pan had already passed out from the pain. I stopped stabbing, staring at the blood pooling all over the floor, and calmed myself down. I stabbed him 20 times to honor my mistress's 20 years of life, but every single blow avoided his vitals. I squeezed his cheeks, anxious time, and sliced it off in one quick motion. The sheer pain jolted Zhang Pan awake. He stared at me, completely dazed. It took him a long moment to realize what was happening. Then he began to wail, thrashing and rolling on the ground in agony. But I wasn't done with him yet. There was no way I'd let it end this easily. I forced a pill down his throat. It could completely blind him. Left unable to speak or see, he'd have to swallow his misery in absolute silence. Right on time, Chu Heng arrived, driving a large carriage. I picked out 2 fat sheep and loaded them onto the back. Then, we hauled a massive wooden chest inside. Hidden inside was the unconscious Zhang Pan. Today was the day she was scheduled to return to the Chow mansion. Ever since she told me about her pregnancy, I had gone to Master Chow. I told him that while it was a tragedy the young mistress had died, he still had Chu Heng. She was pregnant with Zhang Pan's child. After all, in the future, the Zhang family would treat her like royalty. I suggested that Master Chow adopt Chu Heng as his daughter, to give her the status she deserved, and use her to secure a tight bond with the wealthy Zhang family. After all, Chen Yao came from the Chow household. Her servant contract was still in his hands. Master Chow didn't hesitate for a second. He agreed instantly. When it came to profit, he didn't care about his deceased wife and daughter at all. To him, they weren't even human. He never cared about them when they were alive. Now that they were dead, why would he bother remembering them? I sent word to Chu Heng and arranged for her to come today to pick out 2 fat sheep. I would accompany her back to the Chow mansion to retrieve her contract and officially be adopted as his daughter. I drove the sheep cart through the back gate. The maids who used to serve the late madam had all been banished to the back courtyard. I asked them to help unload the sheep. As they did, they crowded around me, their eyes red with tears, pouring out their miseries. Ever since the young mistress got married, there's been no one in this house to keep the concubines in check. The estate has fallen into complete chaos, and it got even worse after the madam died. Those concubines were basically servants themselves. Yet they don't treat us like human beings at all. They've only gotten more sadistic, tormenting us day and night. Every single one of them showed me the fresh scars and bruises covering their bodies. I sighed deeply. The Chow family was beyond saving. They were rotten to the very core. Just bear with this a little longer. Once I find a way to get you all out of here, would you be willing to come work at my Lotus residence? Most of you have received the young mistress's kindness in the past, and you've learned a great deal from her. Whether you want to work as a bookkeeper or a cook in the future, I will always make sure you have a way to earn a living. It might not be as grand or respectable as working in a wealthy mansion like this, but everyone nodded through their tears and choked out. Of course we're willing. Who cares about being respectable?
Chu Heng, you were raised and taught by the young mistress.
You're the only one who actually treats us like real human beings. We're more than willing to work hard with our own hands and learn from you. We don't care how hard or exhausting it gets. Ternang is back. She's in the front yard right now. Go and see her. She can take 2 of us with her this time, and she'll be taking our indenture papers with her as well. Hearing this, the sisters all rushed to the front yard, beaming with joy. Taking advantage of the empty backyard, I opened the secret compartment of the carriage and dragged the wooden box out. After letting Zhang Pan out, I piled up some dry firewood to hide him, and then dragged the empty box back onto the carriage. With that, my mission at the Chow mansion was complete. When night fell, Chu Heng came to find me. The Lotus residence is officially ours. Bill, I did exactly what you told me to do. And sure enough, I got my indenture papers back. I told that old bastard Chow that it would be better to wait until I give birth before adding my name to the family registry. And he actually agreed. Ternang was absolutely thrilled. If I hadn't stopped her, the ecstatic way she was acting, she would have probably drunk a whole jar of wine to celebrate. Chu Heng, thank you so much. You're so much wiser than me. I would have never even thought of asking for my indenture papers back. I smiled and replied, we're just helping each other out. You're helping me just as much as I'm helping you.
Shina paused for a moment
And murmured softly, I'm not doing this just to help you. I'm only doing this to atone for my sins. The young mistress was always so good to me. Yet, I couldn't even save her life. Everything I have today is all thanks to you and the young mistress.
Chu Heng, you know I Chonyang have always been lazy.
I hated hard work, and I was greedy for wealth. Even though I was born with the miserable fate of a maid, I always dreamed of living the life of a highborn lady. I know I have a million flaws, but at the very least, I'm still human. I still have my limits. In this life, no matter what happens, I will never betray you. I promise. I believe you. Everyone has their own path to walk and their own things to chase. I didn't know if I truly saw Chen Nao as a friend, nor was I sure if our partnership only existed because we held dirt on each other. I didn't want to overthink it. All I knew was I trusted her not to hurt me. It was several days before anyone discovered Zhang Pen's body. A foul stench began drifting from the Chow family's backyard. The maids and servants searched all over and eventually stumbled upon Zhang Pan in the woodshed. Terrified, someone immediately ran to report it to the authorities. Honestly, everyone in the household couldn't wait for the Chow family to fall apart. Anyway, when Master Chow was dragged to the magistrate's office, he looked completely clueless. He had absolutely no idea what was going on, but his innocence didn't matter. Perfect Chow knew the truth.
He knew his own son had murdered Zhao for wrong,
So he was absolutely convinced that the Chow family had kidnapped his son in revenge. To him, this was their payback. Even so, the prefect went through the motions of an official investigation, interrogating every single maid from the backyard. A few of them actually suspected me, but not a single person spoke up. Instead, they all swore up and down, "It could never be our master. Absolutely not." But the more they tried to defend him, the more suspicious the authorities became.
Right at that critical moment, Chun Yan arrived at the prefectural office, weeping alongside Madame Zhang.
When Madame Zhang saw Zhang Pan's mutilated, unrecognizable body, she fainted on the spot. Qing Yan let out a piercing wail, clutching her stomach as she collapsed to her knees in tears. Looking at Master Chow, she choked out through her tears. "I told you again and again. The young mistress's death was nothing but an accident. It had absolutely nothing to do with Master." Why? Why wouldn't you listen to me? Overwhelmed by grief, she blacked out right then and there. Zhang Jufu wasted no time, pushing through a swift conviction on the spot. The Chow estate was seized and ransacked, and Master Chow was sentenced to pay for his crimes with his life. He was publicly beheaded, while his immediate family was exiled, and their servants sold off. I tracked down the slave broker and bought back the indenture deeds of all the maids who once served. The broker couldn't wait to get rid of them. After all, these maids came from a disgraced household. Most wealthy families considered them bad luck and refused to take them in. Once I had the deeds in hand, I returned them to the girls. Years ago, the young mistress freed the servants in her own courtyard. Today, consider this my way of doing the same for Madam. You all served Madam faithfully, and you have suffered enough. If any of you wish to come with me to Foron Pavilion, I will make sure you have a proper job." Not a single one of them walked away. "We want to go with you," they cried. "With you around, it feels like the young mistress is still with us." That night, I lit a stick of incense beneath the glowing moon. "The monsters who murdered you and Madam. I've already taken down 2 of them. My lady, just wait a little longer. Very soon I will drag every last one of them down to hell." By the end of summer, I took a trip down to Jianan. I secured a massive shipment of top-grade plump crabs, chartered a large cargo ship, and rushed them back to Weking by water. In the past, when autumn arrived, people in Weking would eat crabs, but being in the north, be in the bottom, they never really knew how to prepare them properly. Now, Foron Pavilion introduced a special 3-course crab feast. First, steam. The steamed crab meat was incredibly plump, sweet, and firm, bursting with rich flavor in every bite. Second, the drunken crab, marinated in fragrant wine lees, was melt-in-your-mouth tender. And third, the rich crab roe was stir-fried to aromatic perfection, tossed with shredded crab meat, and served over noodles. One bowl was never enough. On the very day we launched this 3-course crab feast, I invited only a select group of VIP guests from the 3rd floor for an exclusive tasting. Naturally, the matriarch of Governor Lee's family was our guest of honor. He couldn't stop praising the crab. My face was clouded with worry, but I still forced a smile, pouring him a cup of warm wine. "Eat up, it's delicious," I said. "Lady, you shouldn't eat too much of it either," I added. "Crab is cooling by nature, so it's only good. One of these days, I should cook some mutton for you instead. Mutton is wonderful for warming the stomach." "Chef, you are usually so chill, but lately, you seem to have a lot on your mind." I let out a heavy sigh. "Today, I found out about some things that are far beyond my station. It's weighing so heavily on my chest, but I'm too terrified to speak." The old lady immediately slammed her hand on the table. "With me here, don't you worry. Just tell me." Tears instantly rushed to my eyes. "With you backing me up, my lady, even if it costs my life, I am not afraid. I used to be a maid in the Cha household. Already know this. The other day, I went to visit a dear friend from my time at the Chow Manor. She is now a concubine to the 2nd branch of Prefect Don's family, normally carrying the unborn child of Zhang Pan. She should be living a life of luxury. But to my surprise, she looked incredibly haggard. After I questioned her gently, she broke down in tears and confessed that she had seen Zhang Pan beat my young mistress to death with her own eyes. But to protect their son, Prefect Shang and his wife actually lied to the world, claiming my young mistress killed herself by hitting her head against the wall. She has been living in absolute terror every single day. Even after Zhang Pan died, she still has nightmares every single night. She has lost so much weight, and her spirit is completely broken. Ever since I came back from her place, I've been plagued by nightmares all night long too. In my dreams, my young mistress keeps begging me to help her. She was pregnant. 2 lives were lost in an instant. She cannot rest in peace." I sobbed uncontrollably. The old lady shed tears as she listened. "I once met that girl. She was a good child. What a tragedy that she married such a worthless coward. Besides that concubine, do you have any other evidence?" "He is a prefect, after all." "Without any evidence, it's going to be hard to investigate him." I thought about it for a moment and realized there is still one witness. But we'll have to exhume the body for an autopsy. On the day of the exhumation, Governor Lee invited the legendary Dr. Hu. "Please, Master Hu, examine the body thoroughly." Dr. Hu looked perfectly calm at first, but after the examination, a look of deep sorrow washed over his face. Her skull fractured from hitting the wall, which caused her death.
But judging by the sheer force of the impact, he was shoved by an external force.
And not just once. Repeated blows caused massive bleeding, both internally and externally.
Which eventually killed her.
The poor thing. She spent her final moments trying to shield her belly. If only she had protected her head instead, perhaps she might have survived.
Before consulting Dr. Who, Governor Lee had already had the court coroners examine the body. He has always been a cautious man who needs to cross-examine multiple sources before drawing any conclusions.
Even now, his face was dark with anger,
And his expression was extremely grave.
You don't have a choice. And the more he digs, he said, he doesn't have. On the other hand, she gave Changpan plenty of money to help him flee, with a simple excuse that a mother's love must be this way. She thought she could easily sweep away the injustice done to my young lady. As if it could cover all the filth and ugliness. And the snow melts.
Madame Zhang died in prison.
I have. When? But it cannot be prosecuted as a crime. He asked again. I was able to get the coroner to examine Chao Falang's body, so of course I can have him examine Zhang Pan's as well.
The wounds on Zhang Pan's body were clean and precise.
The coroner said they looked like the work of a butcher. I had never once thought of running away from any of this.
I knew that sooner or later, everyone would find out I was the one who kidnapped Zhang Pan.
Back then, my only fear was being caught too soon. But now, I'm not afraid anymore. Zhang Pan is dead.
Magistrate Chao is dead,
Jiang Zhoufu is dead.
and Madame Zhang is dead too.
Those wicked bastards who ruined the lives of my young mistress and madam. I have sent every last one of them to hell.
My vengeance is complete.
I have nothing left to fear. Let's go, I said calmly. Go where? Governor Lee asked. You came looking for me.
Isn't it because you have the evidence and want to take me in?
Governor Lee chuckled. There is no evidence.
Zhang Pan is already in his coffin.
No one has filed a complaint. The authorities won't exhume the body for an autopsy. I was stunned, not understanding his meaning.
A toast to you, shopkeeper Jew.
A defenseless woman like you, going to such lengths to avenge your former master. I truly admire how, even in your fury, you still respected the law. You didn't actually kill Zhang Pan,
And you didn't flee to escape punishment.
good for you. And naturally, I must respect the law as well. Without evidence, I won't touch you. Besides, Even if we had evidence,
It would only prove that you wounded him.
but none of your cuts hit a vital spot.
So you didn't cause his death.
At most, you'd only serve a few years in prison. But beyond the letter of the law, there is still human decency.
The last time you were thrown into prison,
Your neighbors rallied together to speak up for you.
that is the will of the people.
So, even if you were to end up behind bars, a woman of such loyalty and virtue would still have people pleading for your release. When that time comes, to honor the will of the people, I would still set you free. My visit today was simply to get to know you. From the look of it, Governor Lee doesn't seem to be joking. Besides, the matriarch of our family absolutely loves your Farong restaurant. He doesn't have many pleasures in life, except for good food. If I were to arrest you, she would never forgive me. So today, I am simply here to try the new winter hot pot you launched at Farong restaurant. I hear it is absolutely delicious. They say you have a spicy option and a nourishing herbal option. Indeed. How very filial of you. So, which kind would you like to try, Governor? Or you can always have both. Another spring arrived. Through a gentle drizzle, I rode my carriage to Lo Hoe to visit the graves of Madame and Miss Hay.
I have since moved their graves here to Luahe, Madam's hometown.
The very place she had yearned to return to. Resting together as mother and daughter, surrounded by these peaceful hills and rivers, they probably won't feel lonely anymore. Miss, I opened a new branch of Furlong restaurant. Yes, miss.
I have even created several new dishes, and they are so popular.
But miss, I still can't quite get the braised chicken with bamboo shoots right. In our next life, when we are reborn as mistress and servant again, will you teach me how to make it again? I sat before their graves, sipping wine.
The rain had stopped, but the wind still lingered, shaking loose a flurry of apricot blossoms.
As they drifted onto my shoulders, I knew Miss was giving me her promise.
Through the warm haze of the wine,
I was carried back to the year I was 5, sitting with Miss on the edge of the fields back at the manor.
the young mistress leafed through the book of medicine and Nati Chu Heng.
A gentle breeze swept past, sending apricot blossoms drifting down. She said she loved apricot blossoms and promised to teach me how to brew apricot blossom wine. Now a cup of apricot blossom wine and a brimming glass filled with memories of her.